Hello, my friends. This is part 4 in a series of videos on the astrology of bipolar disorder. And what I'm going to cover in this video are the other 3 components of the bipolar disorder vulnerability AstroSignature. So I have described 3 of the 6 components. In this video, I'm going to describe the other 3. Now, I have not described the first 3 components in great detail. I've given the concept and of what they are so that you understand what they do and how they operate without worrying about every little fine detail of exactly what this formula is. I'm going to go through all of those details of exactly what the formula is in the next video. So let's cover the other 3 components, what they are. Then you will know all 6 astrological components that make a person vulnerable to bipolar disorder according to our research. And these next 3 components, let me read from the last paragraph. The evidence that we have from our research is that these next 3 components do not incline to vulnerability to bipolar disorder as much as the first 3 components, but they are also important. So the first 3 components, from our research so far, they seem to be the most critical and powerful. The next 3 are secondary, but they're also important. So let's look at these next 3 components. And as I go through these components, I want to emphasize an important point, is that, reading from the top of this slide, instead of seeing the birth chart primarily as mythic images that can manifest in many ways. If you're an astrologer, you know that that's the most common way, especially in modern Western astrology, of thinking about the birth chart. These archetypes, these mythic images. In the system of astrology that I use, we do not see the chart as primarily a language of mythic images. We see the astrology chart as energy dynamics. These energetic dynamics generate the myths and stories in the person's life. So it's the dynamics, it's these motivations, purposes that the person has. And the purposes shown in the chart are actually positive. There's a positive potential. So those 3 components that we've studied so far, they are not inherently negative. So if they're not negative, why do they lead to problems in the person's life? Having bipolar disorder is not fun. It doesn't help one enjoy life and be positive and be productive. So how does it happen if the astrology is not negative? It's those forces do not get expressed well. There's frustrations, collisions, obstacles, misunderstandings, and they become negative. So in any energetic process, there's some positive potential and there's some positive aspects to it. So I went to Google and I entered positive traits of bipolar disorder. Well, that might sound strange, like bipolar disorder is an emotional illness. But I Googled it and I read this, for example, from an academic article. I give the website address. Quote, positive psychological traits of spirituality, empathy, creativity, realism, and resilience are frequently observed in bipolar individuals. By gaining a better appreciation for the positive aspects of mental illness and exploring methods to enhance these traits, we may improve clinical outcomes. Oh my God, that gives me chills. Because that is exactly what we have concluded from this research. Especially, I have to read this last sentence because it's just amazingly identical to what we concluded from our research. By gaining a better appreciation for the positive aspects of mental illness and exploring methods to enhance these traits, we may improve clinical outcomes. That's exactly what our research shows, that Uranus and 11 vibration, the spontaneity, It's not necessarily bad. The Jupiter in 13 vibration, the Saturn in 7 vibration. And what's also interesting is the positive traits they identified. The one that really got my attention was realism and resilience. Whoa! Because we think, I mean, superficially, as someone who's not a therapist, I think bipolar disorder, they're just oscillating back and forth in this crazy and unrealistic way. But they're saying realism and resilience. Well, that describes 7 vibration. 7 vibration withdraws, tends to be resilient, persevering, and realistic. So some of the qualities that they're emphasizing as positive potentials are exactly what we see astrologically. So this is encouraging. It helps us have more confidence that our model can be correct, because we're coming up with ideas that I'm thinking are innovations. Well, this is a new idea, and they're already known. They've already been proposed by other people. So that's exciting. It suggests we're on potentially the right track, coming up with similar conclusions from psychologists. Also, another thing about bipolar disorder, as we've analyzed it astrologically, these extremes of a 7 vibration with Saturn and either Uranus in 11 vibration or Jupiter in 13 vibration, if you watch the earlier videos about the 3 components we discussed so far, that's what I'm talking about. That's a broad range of personality traits and motivations. It's going to make the person better able to engage and respond to and be empathetic with many different kinds of people. And I think that can be related to empathy, as was observed as a positive potential. Anyway, I wanted to mention that before we go into these last 3 traits, that all of these things are potentially positive. And I have to say it one more time, exploring methods to enhance these traits, by exploring methods to enhance these traits, we can improve clinical outcomes. Exactly what we're seeing. Okay, so here's the other 3 components. Jupiter in 8 vibration and Saturn in 8 vibration. Those are 2 of them. So the 8 vibration is just very fundamental. It's very essential, very basic. It's important in everything. So the thought was, if Jupiter is in 8 vibration, you're getting some of this large expansiveness. Not quite as extreme or as pressured as Jupiter in 13 vibration, which specifically makes one sense a huge, enormous inner potential, but it just makes the person have a very strong extroverted inclination and grandeur and a tendency towards grandiosity. And similar to Saturn in 8 vibration. The 8 vibration is just very fundamental, very basic, very essential, and affects all areas of life. So Saturn in 8 vibe can incline to those feelings of being separate from others, from being serious and detached and distant from what's going on. And sure enough, we did find that to some extent. So those are 2 of the 3 other components of this AstroSignature. And the third one is a zodiac sign. We've been trying to work zodiac signs and house positions and some of the things that astrologers use into our AstroSignatures, just trying to pull upon the long traditions of common ideas. And here we did see that Sun and Moon in Leo, in either the natal chart or the 7 vibration chart. Why 7 vibration chart? Because 7 vibration chart is deep, thoughtful. It gives meaning and depth to our personalities. And so if you're taking Leo seriously, or it's in the natal chart, why Leo? Because Leo is very self-conscious, very concerned with their own personal development. And our current theory is that Sun and Moon in Leo by themselves, and the statistical analysis appears to be supporting this, By themselves, they do not seem to incline to bipolar disorder. But if you have at least two of the other five indicators, there's five components of bipolar disorder. If you have some of those very strong, the Leo can exacerbate those tendencies a little bit because it makes you more concerned about yourself. Like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? I'm going out of control. I'm spinning out of control with my Uranus in 11 vibe, and my Saturn in 7 vibe is pulling away from that and thinking, God, what a fool I am. And, this battle's going on. And Leo is really concerned about how one manages oneself. And if one manages oneself well, Leo becomes very fulfilled and happy. And if we're not managing ourselves well, Leo is stressed out. So it can increase the problem because of the additional concern about oneself and one's self-development. It's more difficult to detach oneself from that concern. So it by itself does not seem to incline to bipolar disorder, but if you have some of the others, it can exacerbate the problem. That's our current understanding. Again, all three of these also appear to be not as powerful as the first three. Although in our research, we weighted all of these things the same because we just wanted to keep the research simple. I'll talk more about that in the next video. Okay, so let's look at some examples of Jupiter in 8 vibration. And I'll go into a little bit of detail. It was Jupiter connected to Sun, Mercury, Mars, or Neptune in any hard aspect in the 8 vibration. And chart 891 of the 912 bipolar disorder charts is an example of this. So to illustrate what we're talking about, the kinds of things you would see, here is the 8 vibration chart of number 891 of the 912 people. Let me show you the natal chart. That's the birth chart. It says F, means it's a female. Number 891, and that's her birth chart. She was born in 1934 on May 31st, 6:30 p.m. And we just have the latitude and longitude here. It's near or in Paris, France. We have the latitude and longitude. And we have the time as a Greenwich Mean Time as it was recorded in Miguel Galcon's research. So that's the birth chart. And here is the 8 vibration chart. And if we go back to our slide to verify, especially to Sun, Mercury, Mars, or Neptune, and what you see in this chart is here's Jupiter squaring Sun and Neptune. So Jupiter at 17 degrees Cancer square the Sun very tightly at 16 Libra and Neptune at 17 Libra. Jupiter very tightly squared Sun and Neptune. That in particular is inclining the person to be very outgoing, very extroverted, wanting to grow, wanting to participate in life. And then there have to be two other planets there as well, Mars and Saturn, adding even more to it. But our basic formula is to emphasize certain planets. I'm going to get into details of all 6 components in the next video. But there it is, a big Jupiter in the 8 vibration chart. And any of the hard aspects to Jupiter, we included all of the hard aspects in the AstroSignature that indicates vulnerability to bipolar disorder, except for these dashed ones, which goes up to a 16 vibe within the 8 vibe chart. So we're going up to 8 vibe aspects in the 8 vibe chart. So we're in the 8 vibration chart and we're taking aspects up to 8 vibration, which means conjunctions, opposition squares, semi-squares, and sesquiquadrats if you're an astrologer. If you're not an astrologer, it's in this particular software, we're looking at red lines that are not dashed. These are very thick, indicating that they're strong. So that's an example. If you have Jupiter making these kinds of aspects in your 8 vibration chart, it means you are an outgoing, there's a side of you that is motivated to be outgoing. The astrology chart is showing these energetic pressures. It doesn't actually tell us what the person is or does. It tells us what the pressure is. There's something pressuring the person to get out and want to experience the world, probably travel, larger social group, have some influence, get out there. That's what this is saying. Now, getting out there isn't going to make you bipolar, but some form of extroverted interest is behind the dynamics of bipolar disorder, so this does increase that potential at least a little bit. Okay, so that's an example of Jupiter in 8 vibration. The other thing I mentioned was Saturn in 8 vibration. And going back to our slides, here's the Saturn, and it's particularly, we notice aspects to Moon, Mercury, and Mars when Saturn is right with the Moon, Mercury, and Mars. But actually, if you're looking at these charts, any strong Saturn activity in 8 vibration is likely to incline towards this seriousness, this desire to be honest and direct and not fooling around and goofing off and being insincere or being hypocritical. It leads to a desire to be simple and straight and direct. But we saw it especially to Moon, Mercury, Mars, and that's what we put into the AstroSignature. Again, I'll talk more about the details of the AstroSignature in the next video, but I want you to get a feeling of what these astrology charts look like. You look at the 8 vibration chart, you see Jupiter really involved like this. There's something pulling the person to engage in life, travel, have a large social group. And then here's number 471 of the 912. I'm just using these to illustrate examples. And here's the 8 vibration chart, and here's Saturn with Moon and Mercury. This is the kind of thing we noticed occurs in these 912 people who have bipolar disorder, and we saw it with Giselle's clients. Saturn in 8 vibration, by itself, it's not bad. It's not like some big inclination to bipolar disorder. What happens is people have these inclinations to pull away, to be realistic. They saw this as a trait. I just quoted that article. This realism actually is part of what's inclining to the bipolar disorder because it comes into conflict with another part of the person. And there's always going to be some very strong social pressures and things going on in the person's life that inclines the bipolar to happen. So there it is. Those are 2 of the 3. I'll show you the Leo next. But again, very simple to review. You look at the 8 vibration chart, you see Jupiter making a lot of hard aspects. It's pulling the person out into a social world. You look at the 8 vibration chart, if you see Saturn with, conjunct a lot of planets, here it's 2 planets very tightly, drawing the person to a high level of realism. And there are other things above and beyond what is in the AstroSignature itself. The AstroSignature is designed to pull out some of the more conspicuous things. Over time, we can work with that AstroSignature, refine and perfect it. And I'm also going to talk about it in another video, at the interaction, another video in this series. I'm going to talk about how the interaction of your experiences with the details in your chart incline to bipolar disorder. So there's actually a large range of things involved with bipolar disorder if you have a certain planetary configuration and certain experiences, traumatic experiences, that affect exactly that issue. I'm going to give an example of this in a future video of how that traumatic experience relates directly to what's in the chart. It's going to have very specific effects, and at some point it can get diagnosed as bipolar disorder. So what we're talking about is common themes, not the only themes, common themes that occur in charts of bipolar disorder. Okay? It's actually a very complex and intricate process of traumatic experiences impacting the nature of the person and what the person's motivations are. These are typical scenarios, typical astrological configurations that can get triggered. So this is not like, oh, here's a simple indicator of bipolar disorder. However, there are clear trends, clear possibilities, and we can get statistical significance. We can get reasonably strong effect sizes. We can get measurable results. What's going to happen over time in future decades, as these ideas get applied, we'll be able to show how specific experiences with specific kinds of configurations trigger problems. Okay, so to repeat, there are some general themes that are common to many people with bipolar disorder, and these are what they are. I've described 5 of them. Here's the 6th one, Leo. And here's a chart of a person who has, this is the birth chart of number 86 of 912. I'm just using these charts to illustrate the concept so you understand what they are. This person has Sun and Moon in Leo. Now, having Sun and Moon in Leo in itself, our research suggests so far it actually does not incline to bipolar disorder. What happens is that if you have some of those other 5 configurations, especially some of the first 3 that really rock you, a little bit, and then you have some very stressful situations in your life, and you have Sun and Moon in Leo. The Sun and Moon in Leo exacerbate the problem, but you need to have those other configurations, you might say, first. They're primary. And then if you also have Sun and Moon in Leo, they exacerbate an existing condition. By itself, Sun and Moon in Leo does not incline to bipolar disorder. But if you have the other indicators, it's like a catalyst that speeds up the reaction or intensifies it. It exacerbates, it makes it worse. Why would Sun and Moon in Leo make those bipolar tendencies? If you have bipolar tendencies, Leo can make it worse. Why? Well, let me read from the slide so you can see the words as I describe it. The bottom paragraph here, this long paragraph. The Sun and Moon in Leo give a concern about one's personal development. This is what Leo actually does. We've done research on the 12 zodiac signs, and what the signs do, according to our research, is a little bit different from the way astrologers describe it. It's not that Leo is proud and all this stuff. That's one possible symptom. But the energetic process is that Leo has to do with a strong concern about yourself. Like, am I doing the right thing? Am I developing? Am I, how is my personal development? What am I doing with my life? We all have that concern. Leo amplifies that concern. So it gives a concern about one's personal development, and consequently can incline to greater concern about the inability to manage oneself well. So what's happening with bipolar is 2 sides of the person are at war with each other. The extroverted side and the introverted side are not able to agree. They're fighting with each other. And the person is oscillating back and forth between their 2 different sides and unable to reach a creative solution to make both sides happy. That's the therapy that can help. But while they're oscillating back and forth between either their megalomania or their lack of impulse control and their serious, deep, almost profound side, this is something that maybe a lot of popular psychology is not aware of. We put people into boxes. We say, oh, you're an introverted type or an extroverted type. Well, believe it or not, you can be both. Whoa! You can be both. And what happens is when you take the test, your introverted side and your extroverted side kind of balance each other out, and then they say, oh, well, you're in the mid, you're neither introverted or extroverted. But actually, you can be both. You could actually be in the middle, be moderate, but you could show up middle only because you're oscillating between them. This is what our astrological model is suggesting to us, that you're pulled both ways. And then Leo, which is so concerned about his personal development, is getting very stressed out. So the person's with Leo is getting more stressed out by their inability to manage themselves well than other signs. Okay, it intensifies the stress. The more stress, the more pressure, the more the person's being pulled. It's like a rubber band that's getting pulled, the more they snap, the more they exhibit these behaviors that we call bipolar disorder. So this is our model, this is our understanding of how the model works. Now what's interesting about this Leo is that there's a compensating factor. If you have Sun and Moon in Leo, they also give increased motivation to solve the problem. So it's not that the Leo is necessarily bad. It makes you more inclined to become bipolar if you have the indicators for bipolar. It also gives you more motivation to get out of it, because you really want to fix yourself. And so when you go to therapy and there's some kind of program to develop yourself, the motivation, the interest is strong. So it's not all bad. But I want to show you something else as well. I showed you that the Sun and Moon are in Leo in the birth chart. We go to the 7 vibration chart, and the Sun is in Leo there. So there are 4 possible positions: Sun and Moon in the birth chart, and Sun and Moon in the 7 vibration chart. Out of those 4 possible 7 vibration, of those 4 possible Leo positions, this individual has 3 of them in Leo. Sun and Moon in the birth chart are in Leo, and Sun in 7 vibration are in Leo. That's a lot. 3 out of 4 possible. Way more than random, obviously. So that's an example. That's what I'm talking about. If you want to look at your birth chart or a friend's birth chart or somebody who has bipolar, these are the things you're looking at. But again, if you're seeing just a lot of Leo and you're not seeing those other indicators, it's not really an indicator of bipolar at all. It just will exacerbate the other 5 configurations that are really pressuring you to be highly spontaneous or concerned with grandness, pushing you out and beyond things, and also pulling back. That's the fundamental dynamic. So those are the 6 components of bipolar disorder. Now back to our PowerPoint. I think we're basically done here. Yes, we are. So in the next video, this is what, part 4, I think. So part 5, I'm going to show you the details of the bipolar disorder, like exactly what the formula is, what planets, exactly what vibration, what are the orbs and so on that we use. And then after that, I've got a few more videos on the bipolar disorder about, for example, a case of a person who was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and scored low. Because this formula is not perfect. They scored low. That can happen. Why? What are we learning from that? We learn more about how bipolar disorder works. So now that we have something that really appears to work, that we have confidence in, it's now easier to improve that, to learn. And we can learn from the cases that do not work. And I'll show you some examples of that. I'll also show you how we use forecasting to improve the model and how you can predict when episodes will occur. So that's exciting. So several more videos, one on the details, one on how we do forecasting, one on cases where the person scores low on this but has bipolar. Why is that? What is it telling us? And in the future, we'll have fewer and fewer cases that do not agree with the AstroSignature as we improve it. We already have a tremendous amount of numerical, statistical support for this. I will also show you how we reanalyzed the final stage of the research just this past month after the book was published and what that showed us. So there's some new information here that's not in the book. The book on bipolar disorder, the Astrology Bipolar Disorder Scientific Breakthrough, that book and these videos really complement each other beautifully. Beautifully. If you have both, it really puts it all together. It gives you a really rich understanding. But we are going to cover some things that have come up after that book was published 2 years ago in 2022. Okay, my friends, next video will be on the details of the AstroSignature, and then we'll go on to these other things. Thank you very much for listening. God bless. Namaste.